what we've got here is, your elements coming in. And, you've got a nice fade. That's one thing. And they're coming in at the same time as separate images. Let's hide the talent for now. And that should have been that. That's weird. Oh, that's the name. Okay. All right. I see what I'm doing here. That's part of the actress. All right, well, we'll look for that later. I want to show you something. So you got your stuff fading on. That's, transition. Well, I mean, it's opacity. You're animating the opacity. Just show you a couple tricks here. So let's work on this first one. Okay, and I don't know what's behind that. Oh, that's the next image for the next slide. Okay. We'll fix that later, so we're just going to ignore that. There's the image I'm looking for. There's the beach. It's weird that the beach is above that. But let's take a look. Okay, so there's your opacity. Well, that's the position. The position's moving off. And it's sort of fading on here. It's because of this opacity right here. Why is that hand fading? This is going to drive me up a wall. Something is changing around here. I hit U to see all keyframes. And I cannot see it. There's no keyframes here affecting this artwork. Except that one. All right, so let's just roll with it. So let's do... If I go to my transitions, gradient white. Let's mess around with this a little bit. See how we're getting something pretty interesting based off the tonal value of that. You could also figure out how soft you want that to be. And you could animate that. You would just work backwards and have it come on like that. That's one thing you could do. Use a gradient and fade it on more cinematically. Another thing we could try is... That was the first thing I showed you. And the same thing would apply for the newspaper. You could do the same trick with the newspaper. I'll show you what that's going to look like. See how now you're getting some extra depth because you got that image behind it? Just showing you that. Something to consider. Gradient white. Works off the tonal values of an image to bring it in. Now, I do not like the character spinning off like a top. That's not a good transition, even though they're receding into space. Let's try and find that layer. Is this it right here? Miss Bloom? Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kill these keyframes real quick. And we could always, you'd always go back to them. I'm doing save as so I don't damage your file. Okay. The beach and the woman disappear over the hand in the newspaper. And the beach has the woman cut out and it fades away. Let's see what that means. Wait a second. So you're saying that the beach... If this was one image, that would work. This actually looks more interesting than the other thing, like the newspaper stuff inside the negative space there. I'll show you how to do that in a second if you're interested. But let's dive back into her again. Okay, so you can... Gradient wipe will do this. Let's show what it does to her. That's a little bit more elaborate way of coming in. You know, that's pretty interesting. I'm liking the way that looks. That's what gradient wipe would do for her. But here's another thing you can try. Key light. So we could pretend that we are keying out a color. I'll pick her skin tone. And all this is in my section on removing green screen. But you'll notice if you animate this, you can have her fade off much more intentionally. Like first her skin tones will go, then the closest tone next to that is the dress, last the hair. So that would be under the gain. If I animated that, let's say I do it right here. From there to there. Pick however slow or fast you want that to be. See how interesting that looks? Like they're disappearing into the story. And another thing you could do is that beach. I gotta find that beach. There we go. All right, I'm going to hit U here. I'm going to kill the opacity for that. Let's do a gradient on the beach instead of dissolving it off. Do a gradient wipe and see how that looks with the person about to go off. So we'll start it to about there. Look at the difference in that motion. You're getting a much different effect. It's going back into space and disappearing based off of the tones. Like such. Okay, so that's one way of pushing this a little bit. And then you could always have the text come in based off of like an ink dissolve effect because you've got a newspaper print look here rather than have it push in off the side. And the same thing here, like I think these should dissolve rather than slide away. But I mean, that's your call. Let's see, we're here. Here's the person. Here's the beach. Here's the handprint. So let's see what would happen if we did the gradient here. Yeah, so it's like if instead of positioning this off, go forward is about that long, dissolve it off that way, and then that's right lining up with where the newspaper was going to go off. Then I do a gradient there, gradient wipe that is. We'll just guesstimate about that time. Like, look how much more mood you get doing that. And if I turn back on the layer below it, that will be revealed as this one dissolves into it. Now, when you're doing something like this for an image, you're going to want it to fill the screen. That looks a little... See, then you're going into it. But it should Let's hit U. The fast fix for that is just fixing your first keyframe, filling up the screen a little bit more. Like that. So it's filling it up and it looks more deliberate. But you've got some nice images coming along. I would think about you've already got the order of how you want to come in. I would just start thinking about what you want in terms of going from image to image and the way that you want to get there. There's Luma mats, there's the gradient wipe. You could do transition fades, but you see how much more interest you get here by going off of tones. It adds a little bit of richness, especially lends itself to mysteries. And then I would do something fancy for the type that's consistent, almost like the ink animations you see in like Sherlock Holmes or what's it called? Harry Potter, where let's find the Jennifer Connelly text. It's right here. Okay. So I'm going to bring in an ink reveal. And I'm going to slide it to where I want it to begin. Like such. Okay, and I will use this as a mat. Now remember, mats and masks go over your face. So what I want to reveal is down here. In my switches, if I hit toggle switches and modes, I don't want to blend this. I'm going to use a Luma mat. Let's try Luma mat. Okay, let's try Luma Matte Invert because of the way that this is colored. See that? See how much more customization you get on your text coming in that way? Far more cinematic using different types of ink reveals as alpha or Luma mats. I did Luma because this has no alpha. It's tones. It was like white, gray, and black. So, I could put some of these files up for you to look at and experiment with, see what you think about them. But that's just my 2 cents on coming up with a different way of bringing in the images. Let's hit spacebar and see what that looks like. Okay, now actually it's going to be a good comparison. So there's Paul Rudd. I'm going to get rid of his keyframes. I'm going to duplicate this ink, slide it over to where you want him to come in, like right around here. Do the same thing. I'm going to set it up as a Luma Invert Map. Now watch Paul Rudd's name come in better. So I'm going to trim it there so it doesn't abruptly come in. Let's have that just a little bit longer. You want it to be up long enough to be able to read it. So this is a little fast, but I'm just showing you some style choices here. You see already how we went from just simple fades and position to doing something more intermediate and complex, like using gradient wipes, Luma inverted maps, and just playing off of this negative space in the tones. Yeah, making Polaroids fall from the top. Oh boy. It depends. Like if they're going to be coming down, you'd want a lazy spiral and some rotation. Like let me see. I'm gonna go like this, and then I'm going to. Now remember, I'm still selected on this layer, so I'm gonna try and draw. Let's make this white, just because Polaroids have a white border. Okay, fine. And I'm going to draw second shape, just because I'm too lazy to parent these. I just want them in the same shape. Okay, so there's rectangle 2. If I go to the fill for this rectangle, we'll pretend this is your Polaroid. Okay, it's all one shape layer. Now let's tackle that. That's a pretty interesting thought. Okay, we'll pretend there's a picture in here. All right, and I'm going to show you the easy cheesy way, and then I'll show you a way that shows you put more thought and care into this. We'll pretend there's a photo here, okay? So it's falling, so it'll scale down and rotate as it's falling. Let's do that here after this, okay? Just so we've got a little bit of peace and quiet. So I'm gonna hit P for position, Shift S, so it's position and scale. So if I hit S, we'd lose position. So when you want to bring up a second stopwatch, just hold down Shift and hit the right letter key for it. Scale. We're going to scale this up a bit. Move forward. Scale down a whole lot. Say till it's about there. Sure. Okay. So there it comes onto the screen, and we're going to have it rotate a little bit. So I should have hit rotate, not position. Sorry about that. All right. Let's do 3 full spirals. That's too fast. Let's move that apart a little bit, and we'll do 1 full spiral. So that's even too fast. Let's try half a circle. That's a little better, okay? So now you got the image coming down like such. Okay, that's one step. Another step is to add a drop shadow to it. I right-clicked and went to Layer Style. And I'm going to make this drop shadow green just so we can see it. Okay. Now you're starting to see where the drop shadow is. What we could do is animate the distance of this drop shadow. Because as it gets closer to the table, it would get smaller. So I'll show you what that's going to look like. With a smaller distance towards the end. Okay, I'm happy with that. Then I'll go up a bit. About here. I'll get a bigger distance. So you got a little bit of that happening if you want. And remember, this would not be green, you know, it'd be dark, and you could even do something like color burn over whatever image it's falling on to add a little bit of depth to it. That's one way of doing it. Okay, so I'm going to go here and get rid of all of my keyframes, because that's what I do and that's how I roll. I'm going to get rid of the drop shadow. I'll just turn that off with the eyeball. All right, so here we are. Single, boring card front. I am going to click on the 3D cube. I went to my switches. These are the switches. Click switches and modes. Here's my modes. I need to be in switches, and I 3D enabled this layer. I'll explain this in a second. It was the double shape layer that was misbehaving. That's why it was going a little wild when I went into 3D. All right, so I'm going to import that in here. I just double clicked on my negative space in the project panel, or you could always go File, Import File. We'll bring you in here. Scale it down. Okay, the perfect crime. Now, I'm going to scale this one to fit. Move around a little bit. Just like eye it up. All right, we'll pretend this is perfect. So here's our photo. Our photo will make 3D. The front we will make 3D. And I'm going to push this a few pixels, not too much. There we go. One should do. I'm going to parent the photo to the front. Now let's hit R for rotate. And there you have it, a front and a back. So now, as this is falling, you could have it flipping instead of just twirling down. We just needed the white space and then an image, and we parented that image to this. And I only have them 1 pixel apart in Z space with the position. So let's recreate that again. Let's say right here, we're going to have this fall down like you initially said. So let's scale it up a bit. Turn that back on. And we'll move it off to the side a little. We'll pretend it's coming from over here. All right, so there's the position. We'll do scale and rotation. And here's the scale. So I'll go forward a little bit. We'll start scaling it down. Move it over so we can see where it's at. Figure out where it's going to end up. And at what size. So now we've got that falling effect. Hooray. That's not enough. We're going to start rotating it. X, Y, and Z. So let's say at this point, X is the tumble. That, go forward a little bit. We'll go to 0. So now we've got some tumbling going on, okay? I should have it gone around the other direction, but I'm just showing you this for, the fun of it. Let's see what Y is going to be spinning. And then I'll have it end up at 0. So I'm just showing you how you can change how it's rotating on each axis. Like such, to get more of that falling photo look, okay? That's how I want you to start thinking in my class is I've got to go beyond just position, scale, rotation, transparency. Start thinking 3-dimensionally. Start thinking about parenting things. Start thinking about more advanced ways of going from image to image, scene to scene, having a good animation hierarchy and a good information hierarchy. And then just keep trying to push and push until you get better motion. Because it takes practice, and easing this by right-clicking will always make it look better. But right off the bat, this is already looking, a bit stronger. It's got more character to it. Like this would look great with the gradient wipe going to the next image because of all the tone in it. Just little things like that. So I'll send you this and for reference plus the artwork. And we will take a look at Julia's next. All right, this has a lot of thought to it. I like this. Okay, so let's go over a couple things here. You want a snake-like motion, some fire, that type of stuff. That's all fun. Okay. I'll make a little cheat sheet here for Julia. just so she's got some reference along with this recording. (1920, 1080). Let's do 24p. Let's do 15 seconds just for the fun of it. Okay. Delete that. Drag it into here. Okay, so if you drew this, all right, let's first draw a line. Okay, and I'll do this as a stroke. And I'll give it round caps. Okay, now let's add an effect. Let's try wave. I forget what it's called. So we'll start with wave. It might be wave warp. We'll find out. Okay, so watch what's going to happen to this shape. So we're going to do a wider wave with less height, and you can choose the direction it's going in. So if it's flying this way, you want the wave to be going that way. That's one way, and you can also change the speed. Like such. That's one way to get that wind-blown look for the skin, if you were going to do something like that. But another thing you need to realize is your path point would need to animate. So if I click on the stopwatch for that, go forward a little bit. I held down Shift to deselect that. So if this is up, it's going to go down. That can go up. This was down, it's going to go up. That can go down. Go forward. I'll copy the first one, paste it. I'll copy this one. I'm just showing you a quick rough. So now, what's down is up, what's up is down. You get that undulating type of motion, okay? You want to get perfect points. If you get a couple perfect ones, you can loop them. I'm just showing you the quick way of doing it. Keyframe. This is an easy. So remember, like, what's up here in the next one is down, and what was down is up. That's how you keep getting that, like such. That's one way of doing it if you use shapes. Now, if you also look at this dragon, I'm gonna hide this. You've got this gorgeous scaling going on. Well, you're like, well, if I want to work with shape layers, because that's what I'm here to teach you, let's do, I'll duplicate this. First, I'll call it dragon body. There we go. I'll duplicate it. Duplicate the shape. Command D. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click off there. And I think if I parent here, this shape will move with it. So I'm going to hold down Alt or Option to create my expression, pick whip, and then do that. So we'll see if that works. So now we've got body shape 2. I'll call this scales. And let's try dashes. And we'll try white just so we can see the difference in color. We can make the stroke width less. So let's watch this and make sure it's following along with that expression I put on. And it is. They're staying together. So we're golden. So that's what dashes look like. You could taper them if you wanted. Like such. You could also taper the stroke path as well. Now let's try something else. So on the scales, let's see if we can add a repeater to it without having that affect the body. Yep, that worked. Okay, and what's happening here is the position moved, just to show you. So now it's lined up. And let's try... I have in my slides a way to make a checker slide for that. So you could look up that. I'm just showing you what this looks like with the repeater on there. And it does move with it. Let's delete that repeater. Okay, so that's one way, is, you know, the up and the down, and then having your scale pattern parented to the body shape so that they move together. No one's the wiser. That's the first way. That's with shapes. Now, if you actually are better at hand drawing and you've got something like this, clearly you're going to want the body alone, these elements for your tail alone on their own layer, the head on its own layer, and the mane on its own layer, the horns on its own layer. The more layers, the easier it will be to work. So if you're working off of your drawing, you would select it and then puppet pin it. Now remember, puppet pinning is pinning down not only what you want to move, but what you do not want to move. So I would pin the head, like parts where the bends are, maybe the in-betweens, to give you a little more control, like such. For this, I'll pin the feet just so they don't go flying all over the place. You can even pin these whiskers. I'll show you what that's going to look like in a second. Alright, so you just move forward and move your pins. Now remember, what's down goes up, what's up goes down. Let's move it a little bit longer, give it a little graceful motion. So I'm going to, grab that pin, see it's selected, it's highlighted. So I got that one. I'm going to shift click that one. And that one, up, 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 and the head. And I'm going to drag them down a little. I should have gotten them out, but that's fine. Now I'll get the other pins, and they're going to go up. Let's do here and there. See the difference? You'll figure it out with, I'm just showing you what's down goes up, what's up goes down. And you'll figure out how much you got to move one. And you see how this instantly becomes more difficult than the other one. But if you get your puppet pinning correct and you have it looking good, it's going to be pretty amazing looking. Especially if you've got this broken off into layers. So that's just a quick refresher on puppet pinning and how you can use it to move complex illustrations like this. Like flip of the tail. Whatever you want, just try and keep the volume of the body consistent. And I was talking about these whiskers here. See, they can even move. Anything can move with the puppet pinning. Just watch how you pin it and think about the order. So, hopefully that helps. I'll send you this file for reference. And if not, we can end the lab a little early. Remember, think on your work, make it more complex. This is the second of 2 assignments, and you've really got to push yourself. I hope you've been watching the lectures, because you will only get a fraction of what this course has to offer by only coming to lab time. The lectures spill out everything in granular detail, and I go over far more. Sorry about that, that was my phone. Oh, the fire. I forgot to show the fire. So, again, fire, you want to be consistent with the artwork and art style you're doing. But I would suggest using shape layers or artwork with a displacement map or particles. I'll show you what shape layers look like first, and then I'll show you the particle system. So I'm just going to quickly draw a flame. I've done this before. We'll pretend that's the flame. I'll get rid of the stroke and give it a fill. And I'll make it fire color. Okay, so yeah, no problem at all, Isabella. I'm glad you had stuff to show. Okay, so first thing is you want a little bit of life to the shape. So let's do add to the shape layer. Let's try wiggle paths. Okay, and I'm going to click here to turn off the path so we can see what's happening, just so I can see a little better. And right there, that's looking a lot better than a static image. And we could always go down in here, give a little bit more detail, smooth it out. Now let's take a look at it. See, that is looking better already. That's a little too much. That's not bad. Okay. We've got something sort of fire-like already. Let's increase that. Just take a look. I liked it better where it was. Okay. Just randomize that a little bit. Okay. This is a great jumping off point. And now let's try Turbulent Displace on it. And let's see, size. Size amount, okay, sure. And then what we'll do is we'll do the evolution. Let's try alt-clicking there for an expression. Let's try time. And then an asterisk times, let's try 150. And this is going to constantly evolve and change the shape a little bit, add a little life to it. Let's try 350. Nah, won't do, go back to 150. Okay. So we've got some motion, we've got some life, and it's looking pretty good. But it'll look a lot better with a displacement map. Because, you know, you want to do a little bit to give it some nice motion, but you don't want to have to do everything by hand. Yep, thanks. Thank you, Christian. Okay, so the map. I'm going to create a new composition. And I'm going to hit OK. Now I'm going to add a solid in here. Call it fractal because we're going to throw a fractal noise on there. And this is what we'll use to create the fire look. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my displacement map in here and hide it. Okay, and I'm going to save it. Save frequently, save often. Now, I'm going to put a displacement map effect on the line art for the fire. Like such. And I'm going to use... I choose the layer, the displacement map, and it'll be effects and mask. And I'm going to start to move it a little bit, like such. And this is what we're getting so far. Okay, and it's a jumping off point. Now, look at this, edit that. I've talked about this before. If I click on this padlock for fractal noise, and I go back to here, fractal noise stays here, and I can see how altering my image will affect the fire. Like such. So I get a real-time preview for the animation. Dynamics not that bad. And you'll notice as I increase the contrast, there's more displacement. And then for the brightness, the darker it gets, the less displacement we're seeing. So you can use that as your jumping off point. And say, okay, now we're getting somewhere. So if you think you're getting somewhere and that's kind of fire looking, oh, I forgot the most important part. This is why this is not working as smoothly as I'd like it. Fire flows upward, okay? So that would be offset turbulence. I click there. Can't believe I forgot that. I am so sorry. The faster it moves up, the more it moves up, the faster the flame is going to be going. So clearly it's going to go faster than that. Let's see if that's too much. That's way too much. That's not bad. Let's see what that looks like. See? Now we're cooking with gas. That's looking a lot better. Okay, so that was the missing ingredient. I'm sorry I forgot about that. So we've got the fractal animating upwards, and you know what? To add some extra life to it, let's put the same expression in here we had there. So I'm going to alt-click on there, go time, asterisk, 150. So now it'll be evolving as it moves up. Like the fractal will be changing. And that gives it more life in your motion. So we're pretty much in the ballpark. So I'm going to turn off look at this, edit that by clicking on the stopwatch, the padlock again. Now I can adjust the amount of displacement. And you can also play around with your settings here as well. Like such. And that's pretty fire looking. So what you could then do is duplicate the fire, change the color, add in that orange bit to it. You can even try a blending mode at this point. Let's try such, and we could change the settings on this so it doesn't perfectly match the other one. Like such. And we could even try, let's try and scale it down a little bit. Let's see. I'm going to put the point right here, just a tiny bit, just in a little bit, like such. There we go. That's pretty decent. And you could always pre-compose these together if you want. So it's one layer. Call it Fire PC for Fire Pre-Comp. Move all attributes. And let's throw a glow on there. So that's how we roll. And everyone remember, if you're doing glows, you're better off at 32 bits per channel. You get more detail. So you hold down Alt or Option, you click right here in the timeline, right above the timeline by the trash can. Now we're at 32 bits per channel. Now let's dial on that glow. We can glow as far as you want. The threshold is how much or how little you want things to be glowing. The closer it is to 100%, the less will be affected by the glow. It's all about playing around with the settings till you get the look that you want. And you could always duplicate that. Make it a little smaller and more intense if you want. So however you want to play around with it. Actually, we'll make this, let me undo that. What I'll do is I'll duplicate it. This will be the inside, and then the second one will be the outside. We'll make it even smaller in its. Let's try it up there. Let's dial this down a little bit. Get back some of that detail. There we go. It's a little bit better. And there is the fire. And you could have multiple elements of this fire coming out of the dragon's mouth, or just make one giant one. That's one way of doing it. And another way of doing it would be, maybe you could even use something like this as a custom particle and use a particle system, but this might work a little bit better for you in the long run. So I'll send you this file as well for reference. So I'll let this go for like 2 seconds of render time, just so you can see what it's going to look like at full speed. And this was very few keyframes to create this. But the more effects you put on, the more intense it's going to get. But there you go, you know, pretty decent looking fire for a couple minutes worth of work. Like I said, the glow is really as strong or as, you know, weak as you want it to be. Dialing that down really helps. And adjusting the threshold will, of course, affect the color of the glow. Like such. All right, and I'll send that along. I showed you those two techniques. If you can come up with a good way of... I honestly think if you draw out a beautiful dragon, puppet pinning may be your best way of going forward. A little bit of puppet pinning, a little bit of character rigging. And what I mean by that is, like, you saw how puppet pinning the artwork helped it move pretty nicely, but you can't get a very detailed looking dragon using shape layers. With the limbs, it might benefit you to character rig the limbs. Like, let's pretend that this is the top leg of the dragon, and then I'll duplicate that. Wait, let me put my anchor point where it should be. So this top part of the leg, I'm holding down Command or Control to snap. That's going to be the top part of the leg that connects to the body. Now when I duplicate it and I move it, line it up with, you're going to want more rounded edges. I'm just showing you. So you see how you'd have the top part of the leg, the bottom part of the leg, and you could have that great motion for the dragon's limbs by doing it this way with shapes. Or with artwork that's layered. Like I said, you'd want the top part of the leg to be its own layer, the bottom part of the leg, the foot. You know, you'll figure out how the layering goes. And the more layers you have, the more flexibility you have as an animator. And then you'd have like your feet and the toes and the claws and whatnot. It's really how you want to get into it with all of that. And just remember, let's pretend you drew the body. The body will be, you know, its layer. You'll ultimately, we'll pretend this is the body. Okay, here's the body. So here's the bottom leg. I'll call this the calf. Okay, so the calf is over the thigh because of how it animates. And I'm going to parent the calf to the thigh. So as I rotate my thigh, the calf goes with it, but you can also independently rotate the calf. Okay, That's part of that parenting hierarchy structure. The thigh will be parented to the body. So if I parent my thigh to the body, what's going to happen is as I move the body around, the legs stay with the body, but they also still can rotate and move on their own. Should I parent the limbs to the body once I add the... Yes. Make your artwork, and like I said, plan it out. Have the thigh one layer, have the calf another layer, have the foot, and then the talons, whatever. If you keep them separate, you can always parent them, but you'll have more range of motion and flexibility with layers like this. You wouldn't be able to move this like this if this was all one piece of artwork. That's how you bring life to your character. And remember when I was talking about the bear head, anticipation, overshoot, squash and stretch, overlap and follow through action. These are all things that add life to basic shapes when you animate them. Anyone else have anything to show before we call it a wrap? Okay, looks like about it. Thank you for those who've had stuff to show me. Like I said with Isabella's, it's like, all right, I see, you've got your scenes. Now it's transitioning from scene to scene and getting a good flow from scene to scene with your animation. Yeah, no problem at all. So again, reach out to me, keep in touch. If you got ideas, send them to me. If you update your Google Drive folder, email me because I don't get notifications of that. And I'll help you along each step of the way. And I hope you all produce something really eye-catching for the second assignment and have something you're proud to put in your show reels. So have a great weekend and stay in touch if you update any of your art.